Time being 7 o'clock, I call to order the May 23rd Franklin School Committee meeting. Meetings are recorded by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29, as well as recorded by Franklin Matters. Any individual who also wishes to record this meeting must notify the chair in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20F. First order on the agenda is our executive session. So at this time, we will be entering into executive session and will be returning to open meeting pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to discuss strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, and the chair so declares. Is there a motion to enter into executive session at this time?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave?
Yep.
Al?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Elise?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Denise, yes. All right. We will be right back. We are adjourned.
WFPRLP Franklin on 102.9 FM.
everybody all set? Okay. Hold on, my computer is not working. All right. Here we go. Okay. All right, time being 7:14, I call the May 23rd Franklin School Committee meeting back to order. Moving right along on our agenda, next on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. And this evening, we have Ma Red here from Annie Sullivan Middle School, if you wanted to come up to the microphone. Ma Red is an 8th grade student at Annie Sullivan Middle School who continually strives to challenge herself in her academic classes and in the orchestra. She asks great questions, never hesitates to volunteer to speak in class, and is motivated to do well. More importantly, she is a student who is curious and thoughtful. She is a friend to everyone, and her kindness is ever present. She is the youngest of 3 children and participates in dance classes outside of school. She really likes hip-hop or jazz. She's excited about entering Franklin High School in the fall and is looking forward to taking different elective classes that are offered at the high school. We are so proud of Ma Red for representing Annie Sullivan Middle School. If you wouldn't mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. All right. At this time, we have our moment of silence. This evening, we honor the remarkable life and legacy of Nick Gaspar. Nick showed the community the meaning of perseverance. He truly left Franklin better than he found it. Our deepest condolences to the Gaspar family. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along, routine business. Review of agenda. Agenda looks okay to everyone? Okay. Payment of bills, Mr. McNeil?
Bills are in order.
All right, payroll's all set. FHS student reps,
They are currently at the National Honor Society induction, so they send their regrets and wish they could be here.
no, they don't. That's fine. They're having fun where they are. All right, so superintendent's report, Mr. Gier.
I also wish I could be at the induction. I'm here with all of you. This is great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all who showed up in person and those who are online. I'll start off with our Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy. Really proud to read this off regarding some of our students. We're excited to announce that the Franklin Public School District participated in the Massachusetts State Seal by Literacy for the 22-23 school year. This program was designed to recognize students who are proficient in English and any other language, regardless of whether they learned it at school, in the community, or at home. Our participation in the Seal of Biliteracy program reflects our commitment to encouraging language learning, certifying biliteracy skills, and for recognizing the value of language diversity. To earn this seal, students must demonstrate a high level of proficiency in English and achieving a score of 472 plus on the ELA MCAS, or 455 plus with a plan. And additionally, they must demonstrate high levels of proficiency in the world language by achieving a minimum score equivalent to the intermediate to high on the state-approved assessment for completing in the specific language in which they are testing. And the skills include speaking, writing, reading, and listening where applicable for the languages that are not readily available with the assessments. So the following students, and we have 2 who are here tonight, and I'd like to have them come up. I'm going to read the name of our students, and then we are joined tonight by Artemisia and Akil. I'd love for them to come up at this point. I'll read names, and then we'll just we'll give them an opportunity to just soak in some recognition that's well-deserved. So we have Typer Apicella, French and English, Audrey Bonacci, which was Latin and English, Parham Daniel was Farsi and English, Matthew Donaldson, Latin, English, Joshua Dunlap, French, English, Matthew McDonald, Latin, English, Jasmine Ming, Latin, English, Hope Zayavanth was French and English, and Artemisia Saparov, who's here tonight, French, if you could raise your hand. Hi. And Akil Savant was French and English as well. So we're just really proud of you, and I'd like to give a round of applause for. And I'll just say one last thing off the script a bit. It's not lost on me or anyone in this room. I spoke last school committee meeting about the students that we recognized for music when Ms. Rudsick came. And to get the accolades and kind of soak in this moment right now is excellent, but what's not lost on me is the time that you had to spend on your own, practicing, learning, developing the ability to speak 2 languages, which is amazing. And it's just not lost that the work that goes into this on an individual basis when no one's around to provide an applause translates tonight. And we're just really excited to celebrate you tonight. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, and we cannot begin to thank all the teachers who've helped us along the way. I mean, certainly the passion from the Franklin High School teachers has gotten us to this point, and we're so glad we studied French in high school.
Yeah, and I just want to say that Franklin High School does a really good job of recognizing people for just going out of the boundaries and just trying to learn a new language. I think it's really important to encourage that for the future. It's really a really important skill.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, merci. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have our Spain trip that took place. Is Mrs. Keenan here today? Not today. Okay, we're going to get to that one another time. We'll come back to it. I wanted to share an update on graduation. The FHS graduation will take place on June 2nd, 2023 at 6:30 at Franklin High School. And you can find more information online on the Franklin High School website and also through the newsletters that the administration puts out. I wanted to share a brief budget update. I sent a similar message to staff today regarding the budget. And I wanted to just follow up that as a recap, the recommended funding from the town administrator identified $71,252,779, which supports an increased allocation of $1,031,954, which is about a 1.47% increase in the town's budget. So since receiving that information, we have been working hard to analyze all aspects of the budget and identify the reductions from the school committee's approved amount to the town administrator's recommended amount. And it's taken countless hours to develop a budget that meets those numbers. With that said, I want to just impart and share with everyone, we've taken this very seriously and really tried to be as thoughtful as possible around those decisions regarding budget. And I just wanted to say out loud to folks that, we will be respectful and notify people who are impacted as soon as possible, while also being discreet and try to be as respectful as possible with that. There are different categories, which we talked about before, around where reductions come from, but we're sensitive to any staff members that may be impacted along the way. And we are intended to go in front of the town council tomorrow night in this exact room. That will take place at 7 p.m. And Mrs. Goodman and I are planning to be there. It's also on the 25th as the second night if we are expected to return. I received some emails from our music community advocating for a music program. And as a member of this community, I just want to say that I also value the achievements and recognitions of our music students. And beyond being a community member and someone who works in the system, I'm also a parent of a student who has benefited tremendously from the music program. And I just wanted to, I've been emailing individual folks who've reached out to me with a more personalized response, but I just thought I would take a moment in case I missed anybody or there's someone waiting, just to kind of call attention to that and say that I understand the concerns regarding the budget and how it affects these programs. And also, as a leadership team, we're really working hard to try to distribute reductions across levels and departments as much as possible, keeping in mind enrollment, keeping in mind a few other components, and we're doing our best to support programs that we can and provide experiences for kids using the funding in which we're allocated. I appreciate the perspectives and advocacy I've received from not only our educators, our leaders, and our families, but also I appreciate your advocacy on behalf of schools as well as the school committee. The final message I have is for Memorial Day. As Memorial Day approaches on Monday, May 28th, we honor the bravery and selflessness of our veterans and service members who've defended our freedoms. And let us strive to uphold the values that they fought for and remember the sacrifices with gratitude and respect. And I want to thank all of our veterans out there for their unwavering dedication to the country. There's a few things that we've already covered tonight that certainly put things in perspective, and that's not lost on me.
Thank you. We'll go through. Any comments, questions, Camille?
No.
Dave?
Thank you very much for the update, especially as it kind of relates to the budget. I really do appreciate, I know all the hours that are going into this whole entire budget season. For those two who have, within the community, who've kind of reached out to us, as Superintendent Shakir, as you mentioned, the budget hearings will be going on tomorrow and the following day, where there we'll start to really kind of figure out exactly where our budget lands. And so definitely, any kind of questions, and I would just advise everybody to just continue staying informed and watching those meetings throughout this week for the budget hearings.
Yeah.
No questions.
Dave?
No questions, but yeah, thank you for giving us the update on the Massachusetts Seal of Bell Literacy, and congratulations to all of our students that received this recognition. It's really excellent that we partake in that. Thank you.
Elise?
No questions.
Megan?
No questions.
I wanted to also thank you for the information about the music. We received a lot of emails over the weekend, and just as a parent whose son really loves music, he's in band and jazz and just adores it. So I received the email that went out to all of the parents, and I was a little bit disappointed to see the misinformation that was shared. So I hope that people actually tune in, dial into the budget hearings, and start paying attention on what's happening. And that's it. All right, so we'll move right along to guest presentations.
Okay.
Mr. Gier.
All right. So we're going to switch it up now. We're going to clear the air here a bit on some heavy topics, because we have some really exciting things to share right now. And when I think about the folks that we have in the room and folks that are not here in the room today, we have some retirements. And I just want to say up front to everyone who's here, just in general, we have some things that we're going to read, but we want to just take a moment to just thank you for choosing to work in Franklin and serve the students in any capacity, whether you're a teacher or an ESP. I have folks on this list that are doing a lot of different things, secretaries. We just appreciate that you chose to work here and work on behalf of our kids, some of you for multiple years, many years, some dating back into the 90s, which is excellent. So without further ado, each of us, Mrs. Morano and Mrs. Rogers and I, will read the names of some of our retirees. First, I thought I would list who's not here, and then we can move on. So, folks retiring this year, Carol Allen from Annie Sullivan, Lisa Trainer, we talked about already. Laura Flanagan is a secretary at ECDC, is retiring. Beth Simon, the Horace Mann secretary. Linda Doherty, the secretary from Jefferson. Brenda Reed, an adult ed coordinator for lifelong learning. Janet Travers, an ESP from Parmenter. Anne Marie Williams was our cafeteria manager at Parmenter. And that leads us to folks that are in the room right now. And I would like to start by acknowledging Aida Eisman. And Aida, can you just stand up and be recognized for a minute? Hello? So, Mrs. Eisman, after decades of teaching and learning, Mrs. Eisman made a decision to retire from the field of public school teaching. Ms. Eisman leaves big shoes to fill. She held her students to the high standards because she believed that all students were capable. Students could count on Ms. Eisman for assisting them through times that were very challenging, whether it's math or in life and whatnot. And she's always been there as a constant supporter of her students. Ms. Eisman also brought a human perspective to the classroom. She recalls in her early years in education, this is a quote, she remembers when she started teaching that I thought that the students were going to make fun of me because I had an accent, and then I was going to feel really awkward. And then it occurred to me that I should take advantage of that and use some of this laughter in class to bond faster with students, and it's worked since. I tell them all the time, you teach me English, I'll teach you math. And a sense of humor goes a long way, and I know Mrs. Eisman and I had the opportunity to meet over the April vacation where she announced her retirement, and I recalled I worked on a high school team with Mrs. Eisman, the freshman team, when I was an assistant principal, and the students counted on you for math, but also I think about the level of care you had for students, that they knew they could go to your room when they needed help in anything beyond math. And I can recall many times walking down the hall after school and just seeing kids sitting in your room and chatting with you, and just found it to be a very safe space. So for all that you've done for every student that's worked or come through Franklin Public Schools, we just thank you and congratulations on your retirement. We wish you nothing but the best. We have a small gift. I'll just walk it over to you now, but we want to just, you'll see folks that are retiring today are getting these. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. And we'll put you on the spot. If you want to say a few words.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's bittersweet, but you'll see me around.
All right, so I have the pleasure of asking Colleen Donahue to please stand. It's hard to find the words to describe the incredible impact Colleen Donahue has had on the Horace Mann Middle School community and the Franklin community. She is a master teacher, but her work reaches far beyond the classroom. Her job title is Math Curriculum Enhancement Teacher, but her commitment to special education, to the team, and to promoting kindness and community demonstrates strength in areas far beyond one subject matter. Colleen embodies what it means to be an educator. She's passionate, dedicated, intelligent, and caring. She is a model for us all, and her legacy will forever be felt here in Franklin. Colleen, congratulations on an amazing career. Best of luck in your next chapter. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with you.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank Franklin Public Schools. I came here in 1987, right out of college. I thought I'd stay for a year, and I'm so lucky. I found the profession, the best profession in the world. I've loved every minute. I'm leaving with a lot of tears. But I'm asking all of you at the school committee and central office and all the parents to please help teachers to remember that this is the greatest profession in the world. Give them the respect and support them, and do anything you can to make sure that you are taking care of them, because they're taking care of your children. So, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Elaine Martin. Elaine has proudly served the Franklin Public Schools as an educational support professional since 1996. Over her 27 years in Franklin, Elaine has worked at ECDC, Parmenter, and Keller. She came to Keller in 2016. She has enriched the Keller School community in so many ways. Most notable are her connections with all students. Ms. Martin greets students with a smile as they get out of their cars and off their buses daily. She also engages them in conversations about their activities and progress in school. You will often hear her talking about Boston sports, especially her beloved Celtics. Let's go, right? Let's go tonight. In the classroom, Mrs. Martin works to meet students' needs in all content areas. She particularly enjoys math. Elaine, you have touched the lives of so many students and staff. You will be truly missed. Congratulations on your retirement. Mrs. Zarella. Mrs. Zarella. Mrs. Zarella is a hard-working teacher who has dedicated 20 years to teaching at Parmenter School. Her dedication does not go unnoticed as she consistently stays beyond the normal hours to plan and prepare for her students. Mrs. Zarella routinely meets with her colleagues to ensure her students are getting the supports they need. She is committed to the success of her students and her profession. Mrs. Zarella consistently demonstrates high energy that is infectious and contributes to the students' enthusiasm for learning. Over the last 20 years, she has stayed up to date with current practices and is committed to providing the appropriate curriculum for her young learners. We wish her the best of luck in her retirement as she creates wonderful and well-earned memories with her husband, John, and I look forward to seeing both of you on our walks.
And just to round off the retirements, as it's known, Mrs. Goodman is going to be retiring. She still has a few meetings left to attend with us, so what we thought we would do is embarrass her a few times along the way. It's kind of like, when like a baseball player retires and each stadium has to do like their cheer. We're going to try to do that for you for the rest of the year, okay? But I didn't want to I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that as part of this, and congratulations to everyone. And once again, thank you for your contributions and your dedication to the Franklin Public Schools and the students who go here. So thank you. Okay. Next up, and any comments on retirement? We good there, or I don't want to.
The only thing that bothered me was how you were like, and some people have been here way back since the 90s. That was yesterday. What are you talking about?
And I was wrong, so you're right. I shouldn't have said it that way. Yeah. And I didn't mean it in a bad way, just for the record. Okay? It shows commitment to a profession and a system, so I think it's a wonderful thing. The next up, we have school highlights, and we're joined today by Annie Sullivan Middle School. Mrs. Morrison is here with Mr. Procaccini, principal and assistant principal. I will pass the mic to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for having us. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Lizzie Morrison, principal of Annie Sullivan, and Mike Procaccini is the assistant principal. We are excited to be here to celebrate our amazing staff and students, and we're happy to be back in person because I feel like we were on Zoom for a while. We are going to highlight a few areas of our school improvement plan and our focus items for this year. One of them being social and emotional well-being of students and staff. Congratulations. Thanks. We all know that we can't have a high-functioning building without happy people and people who are taking care of themselves and feel taken care of. So one of the things to highlight is our advisory program. And I know you've received and listened to presentations from different stakeholders about advisory, but we just wanted to speak a little bit more specifically to what it looks like at Annie Sullivan. You'll see a picture up there of the 6th grade group on a combined activity creating a poster, but we do have a schedule for advisory, so Mondays are the first day of the week. We live stream announcements. Mr. Procaccini and I go on. We think we're quite hilarious, starting the Monday off on a right note with the pledge, the national anthem, celebrate birthdays, preview lunch, what clubs are meeting that week. And then we set the tone for whatever the advisory focus is that the advisory committee has planned. And I think one of the things we've noticed this year is a lot of the lessons, either through Second Step or created by the committee, are like just in time. Like we're seeing a need because of student behavior. One of the examples that we're working through is managing conflicts. So helping students to role play a little bit and take other people's perspectives if you don't agree with someone or if you're having a conflict. So that's just one example. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, kind of the meat of the week, they focus on those lessons that typically take longer than 20 minutes, so they're spread out over 3 days. And then Friday, they engage in team building, that fun day. They can play quiet ball, or they could go for a movement break outside, and just continue to build that close relationship that they have as an advisor. At Annie Sullivan, we have small groups anywhere from 10 to 14, which is ideal for making those meaningful relationships with that trusted adult or kids that they may not be in other classes with. And that wraps up the week for that. And then this year, as we're continuing to grow the program, the advisory committee is putting together a survey for staff and for students to get feedback to inform what the next year's advisory program will look like. Another area that we had in our school improvement plan is focusing on different screening tools. We know our students have higher needs in many different areas than they have before, so it's really important to see where they are and what supports they need, what we can offer, what outside resources could be offered to them. So in 7th grade, we had, for the second year, the Wellesley Center for Women come in and do the signs of suicide lesson that previously was taught in health class, co-taught with our counselors. But this year we had a group come in, thanks to Paula Morano for helping set that up. And of our 7th grade students, 30% of our students were flagged as needing a follow-up conversation. So that was much more than last year, and I think pretty in line with what we're seeing in terms of the needs, the mental health needs of our students. And that could be anywhere from just a check-in with another counselor or a referral for an outside provider to follow up with the student and the family. In 8th grade, we, on Thursday, have our SBIRT training, and that's screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment to get an understanding of where our 8th graders are in terms of substance use and what they've experienced, what they're aware of, if they're currently using, as a way to intervene early and get some supports in place for those students. Another screening tool we are using is the Panorama Survey, which has been really helpful for us to look at and see kind of through a third party what our students are feeling, if they're feeling connected to school, if they're feeling like they have a go-to person at school. Our 6th graders do a great job, our teachers, of having the students do a daily SEL check-in just to see how you're feeling today. Do you need to talk to someone? What's something good that's happening? And it's a quick review of a Google document, so the teachers can either check in with the student then or refer to a counselor, and the students are able to have FaceTime with someone immediately. There's obviously a lot of different data points to take into consideration, the grades, the attendance, these SEL needs, but I think overall what we're seeing is that increased need for mental health supports in the schools. We do have an added social worker this year who has been a great resource for us and has stepped in many different ways, but that is something I know all of you and all of us are advocating for because the needs are there. We see them daily. I think the next slide is for, I was going to go back to staff, but I'll go on to this one next. The staff is a huge piece of making sure that their mental health feels validated and cared for. So we try to give the gift of time whenever possible. If we're asking them to complete an additional survey, trying to find time for them during the busy day to complete the survey. We've asked for input when we're planning meetings so that they feel like their voices are heard and that the professional development is meaningful for them. And that's actually something we've received feedback on this year that we'll carry into next year, is possibly doing more choice. So if someone is really struggling with managing behaviors in the classroom, they could attend a professional development on that, while someone else may need to focus more on engagement strategies and just catering to the different needs of the teachers. And then we have had a few fun team building activities with the teachers, with a Pictionary tournament that got a little heated, and a pickleball tournament one day after school, or a couple days after school they've been playing. So just trying to provide some healthy competition and a way for teachers to connect and feel a sense of belonging at school. And some other areas to highlight in terms of school culture, we have a peer leader group who participated in trainings across all 3 middle schools with the ADL, and they then took that information, attend weekly club meetings in order to plan and teach lessons to 6th graders. And those lessons have been happening and are continuing to happen. They also attended the Youth Congress in Boston. We had a small group of representatives go just to be around other like-minded peers and feel empowered with their leadership, and something that we're very grateful to be able to do. We had a Colgate 13 a cappella performance this year, which our PCC funded as a way to bring in just another opportunity for students. They watch sports games and there's plays, but we really didn't have something like this. So we were excited about it, and I think all blown away at the skills.
Was that the first time we were back in the gym?
It was.
Like an assembly?
Yes, and our students needed some help navigating, sitting. They're like, wait, we sit where? How far away do we need to sit? So,
but the joy that
yes,
it brought was evident.
Yes, that was a great performance. This year, we actually didn't have interest in student council, which is a huge culture builder, and so a small handful of 8th graders really were passionate about bringing Spirit Days back. And so they planned monthly Spirit Days. We had many of meetings with them. They've turned it into a competition. So they go around and tally participation. They judge if they think you're participating or you just threw on a hat the day of the class before. And so that's something that has been really fun to see 6th graders to 8th graders all participating in just building that culture of having fun and connecting with others. We also had an 8th grade field trip to Boston last week. All 3 middle schools went on different days, with a thanks to Mr. Mello, our social studies teacher, and Tim Frazier, really helped get this up and running just to provide a common experience for the 8th graders as they move on to high school. When Mr. Mello first came to me with the idea of a field trip, the idea was taking 130 8th graders on a train to Boston for the day, but it ended up the buses worked out, and we had plenty of chaperones. A ton of parents were interested, and our teachers did a great job. So they toured the State House, did a scavenger hunt of landmarks around Boston, had lunch, and came home right in time for dismissal. So that was another great opportunity that I think our 6th and 7th graders are really excited about having in the future. And now, Mr. Procaccini is going to talk about engaging in rigorous curriculum, mainly focusing on the Open SciEd implementation in the science classrooms. Turn it over to you.
Yeah. I feel privileged to be able to sort of report on behalf of all 3 middle schools. This is not just an Annie Sullivan initiative, and I feel like we were very well prepared for this year. And thanks to some of the work from Dr. Rogers in her former role, we really have some tight alignment between Open SciEd and what it is as a curriculum, and our middle school science vision, which was developed during that last science curriculum committee. What you'll see if you are very interested in science curriculum, the new thing is it's phenomena-based. Is it phenomena-based or not? And essentially, what that means is that the students have a meaningful context for what they're learning about. It's not just the what they're learning, it's the why as well. And that, for Open SciEd, is what kicks off every single unit. There's what's called an anchoring phenomena. Before I get into some of those examples about of what that looks like, I just wanted to highlight the fact that a strategic initiative was that we have guaranteed and viable curriculum and high quality materials. Again, Dr. Rogers, more credit for you here, did a lot of research beforehand and really narrowed down what we were looking at in terms of what we'd adopt. We really only compared Open SciEd and Amplify Science during that curriculum committee time. And Open SciEd is that only resource reviewed by Ed Reports with a green rating for alignment and usability. There's some really long reports on Ed Reports that'll really go into more detail about that, but it is a high quality resource. We don't have any doubt about that. And we've seen that manifest in our classrooms this year. This will be one of the more popular visuals that you'll see anytime someone's going to talk about Open SciEd. The instructional model really follows this storyline approach from all units. Every now and then something's in a different spot, but what I really want to highlight is the fact that there's a storyline and a path for teachers to follow, but it is very much student-led as well. The driving question board, which is the second routine in place, that is what teachers use to say, okay, I'm going to personalize this a little bit for our classroom, and how can I use those student ideas to drive our investigations. But there's lots to unpack with the model as we proceed further into the implementation. It's a 3-year implementation. This year, teachers are implementing 2 units. Next year, it'll be 4. And then the 3rd year will be full implementation. So now we get to see a little bit about what it looks like at Annie Sullivan. This is in Mrs. Turnullo's class. She is doing a great job regularly updating families too about what it looks like. This is through Class Dojo. So in these images, you see students on the left. They are basically designing and planning for building a MRE, and that then is tested in the picture there to the right. The phenomena begins really with how are you going to design an MRE that's easily accessible for everyone? They engage in some learning about how MREs are not accessible, or they're pretty typically found with military folks, stuff like that. I did hear from teachers that students were very engaged in that phenomena. Some key Open SciEd features that you'll see. Scientist circles are a big one. So just the simple fact of getting students in a circle to talk about their learning. And then there's other discussion strategies built into that. Students are using science notebooks to really track their learning over time. They're doing a lot of modeling. In classrooms, you're going to see chart paper posted basically all over the place, showing progression from their initial ideas to kind of completion, although that's not what it's about. It's really, again, what's the progression of their ideas over time. There's driving question boards in our classrooms. Again, the anchoring phenomena really kicks it off. Then students are going to be thinking about, okay, what other phenomena are related to this anchoring phenomena. The words we have earned, that's kind of a new vocabulary strategy that's very specific to Open SciEd. So instead of previewing vocabulary up front, which is, I know, conflicts with keys to literacy, they really reveal words and put them on the word wall when the whole class has owned them and used them. And that's when it'll go up on the wall. Consensus modeling is basically not just students drawing models and labeling and showing their thinking in their own notebooks, but actually the whole class coming together and going through discussion strategies of like, what do we think as a class, which is a pretty complex process and can be messy too for teachers, but they've done a great job with it. Teachers prepare students for assessments with gotta have it checklists, so really scaffolding progress towards that summative assessment. And again, just going back to the instructional model, routines. Every single investigation, every single lesson has some sort of Open SciEd routine built into it. On the left, you'll see that these are the norms that most of our classrooms are adhering to. These are from Open SciEd, but the teachers have tried to make it tailored to their own individual classrooms, but the baseline is that we have a respectful classroom, an equitable classroom, that they're committed to our community, and that we're moving our science thinking forward. It's a culture of figuring out, as opposed to like a culture of I'm the knower of information. And then on the right, you're actually seeing kind of like a modified scientist circle there. That is a student that's holding a beaker, which is basically a discussion. If you have that beaker, you are in charge of the discussion, you're driving the discussion. And you can see the engagement in his face about what he's talking about. And just, if I do have some, do you think I have a couple minutes? More time? But this is an image of the consensus model that I was talking about. Again, lots of drawings, lots of modeling happening in classes. Those Post-its would be adjustments to the model that are being planned. I love the picture on the left. Camille, your son's in the picture, and I wanted to acknowledge that I had hoped to bring some students here. I failed at that, but at least he's in the picture, and it also highlights...
He has a haircut, thank God.
It also highlights how far we've come in a couple decades. Those books are ancient, and that was really, the old school science curriculum. We're learning the what from these books. But now we see students engaged in the why, and again, that all goes back to that anchoring phenomena. It is a rigorous curriculum, especially because of some of the summative assessments that teachers are working through. This is one of the more challenging aspects of Open SciEd right now for teachers and for students, because it's all application-based. Some of the changes to the MCAS with the STE MCAS are going to be aligned to this, where it's a performance assessment. So you're not going to see any multiple choice on here. You're not going to see any fill in the blank. They need to take their learning and apply it. This assessment in particular is from the 8th grade bath bombs unit, and they're learning about chemical reactions. This assessment asks them to take what they've learned about the chemical reactions with the bath bombs and apply it. I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom. But you can see with some of the verbs here, use the model to support an argument. It's over and over, using a model to support an argument, higher level of Bloom's. But they're taking what they learned about the chemical reactions with those bath bombs, and then they are going to construct a scientific explanation to advise the government of India what they should do about the Taj Mahal, because there's a similar chemical reaction between what's happening with the bath bombs and acid rain that's degrading the Taj Mahal. So I think that's a pretty quick snapshot of just how rigorous this curriculum is.
Great job explaining it.
Yeah, tried. That's all I got on Open SciEd, unless you have any questions.
You all done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Question time.
All right, perfect. Camille, start with you.
First, I'd like to say thank you so much. Both my kids have either gone through or going to Annie Sullivan, and it's just such a welcoming environment, responsive teachers and administrators, and I couldn't ask for a better place to send my kids. I don't get as many reports as I would like from a 7th grader, as I'm sure you know. But I have heard of some more participation in the Spirit Days, so those group of kids are really effective in getting people who are less likely to participate in those sorts of things to participate. So I'm really glad to see that. Yep. I also love hearing more about the Open SciEd, because I knew, you can read about it. And I know at first, my son was like, whoa, I'm not like memorizing terms, or it's so different and it's messy at first. And but he has come home so excited about either he and his partner won some kind of competition, they had to build something, or he brought home something. And it's 8th grade, they do the meal ready to eat, or
Yep.
We don't have to add that on the educational thing. MRE is meal ready to eat. You've eaten plenty of them.
3,000 calories per
I've
day.
eaten plenty of them, yeah.
3 in a day.
But I just applaud it makes me want to be a science teacher, like go back in time and become a science teacher. And not only the rigor, but the excitement of the kids leading the science is just, thank you so much. And I love that you rolled it out a little bit at a time, because it can be jarring. Either, I know for some parents that I've heard around the community, like, what is that science thing? What are they doing? And so I love that the 3-year model helps roll it out so that both parents and kids and teachers get used to it. My only questions are the same question I asked, which you already addressed in more mental health services and support, but also thinking back to our decision a few meetings ago about not moving forward with the redistricting, but that doesn't mean that the Keller issue is not. So what help can we offer to revisit that and to look at space? I mean, when we had a listening session, we had parents who were like, well, I'm an interior designer. I can come in and help you figure out space. So it's out there if you need the help to like re-envision some spaces. We would be happy to, figure out those names and bring them in. But what help can we offer you to keep that going so that because I'm still remembering the constituents who were really eager to see that happen. And although it was a small group, we definitely don't want to lose sight of that, and the teachers don't want us to lose sight of that. So how can we help you? And it could be a later conversation, but please keep us informed about how we can help you.
Yeah, thank you. A couple thoughts on that. Annie Sullivan's enrollment is less than the other two middle schools, so I think that's a continued conversation that we need to have in the community going forward. As far as the Keller Annie Sullivan complex, Mr. Stark and I talk regularly about the space that's needed and even make shifts mid-year if there's a need for it. If we have the space, how are we using it, what's available? We've already started those conversations for next year to make sure that if we have an open classroom, that it could be used effectively by Keller teachers, support staff, whatever it may be. So,
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple things. One, really just like actually piggyback on my colleague, I love the explanation about Open SciEd. It's really great. We've been hearing about it and kind of saw it in action during some of the tours, but to really kind of get that detailed breakdown was fantastic. So thank you very much. And also just a question too in terms of the gradual rollout of Open SciEd. Is that something that they kind of recommend when you kind of go, or is that something, a decision that was made locally?
Yeah, it's definitely an Open SciEd recommendation, and I believe we followed almost all of their recommendations, and it's aligned with their professional development plan. That's probably part of what I left out too, of just how amazing the professional development is. It's something where the teachers are putting on what they call student hat and teacher hat. So you go there and you're basically trying to experience the unit that you're teaching as a student, and then step outside of that and have some time to process as a teacher. So it's not this thing where you're like doing a deep dive into the content, you're doing a deep dive into the pedagogy.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. And then something else too that was mentioned just in terms of the suicide screening. So we talked about like the 30% of students that were flagged. So first, how of that subset, how many were reached? Were we able to kind of reach out and make contact with all 30%?
All 30%. That's part of the program that comes in, and we strategically plan the teaching of the lesson, the screening, and ensure that there's enough follow-up that school day. So we always do it earlier on, never on a Friday. And Wellesley's been wonderful to work with, but all families have contact. I think there was maybe one or two families that the counselors were having a hard time getting a hold of, and we were able to make that connection for them. I don't have the statistics because it is a confidential screening. The program really works directly with the family to make sure that there's a follow-up resource or a referral to a provider. So we don't get that information unless the family says that they can share with us. It's really just about supporting the student. If we don't need to know, and the family is handling it, then that's ultimately the best.
Great, but at least, and that kind of, the follow-up question was how quickly, so
yeah,
at least it's great to know. That's terrific. And then, again, just to kind of also, this might be actually more, I think, for Lucas in your office, but I think we kind of talked about this at the last meeting, but that Wellesley program, again, that was it, correct me if I'm wrong, was that an earmark from the state?
It was.
And has there been any update to that in terms of throughout this budget season?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So one, thank you for this presentation. Very educational and informative. I think people are so removed from what happened in the classroom. I think something like this helps us understand really what happens today, because what teachers do now is vastly different than what they've done before. And just from this presentation, what I'm hearing is that Open SciEd is pretty much for science what illustrative math is for math. Teaching them how to think, how to understand, how to digest, and distill the information, not necessarily being taught specific formulas and kind of memorization and rote, correct?
Yep.
So a lot of the techniques seem to be transferable to things beyond this. I mean, the student circles, I thought that was amazing. Having students work together, get consensus, share their ideas, work as in a group, which is helpful throughout your adult life, whatever opportunities that you have. So I thought that was phenomenal. So thank you for that work that's being done there. The consensus modeling I thought was amazing as well. Very excited to see what's being done. What are you hearing though from the students directly in terms of this, in terms of like their experience now with science? Are we seeing kids enjoying it more and saying, hey, you know, I want to be in this field, whereas before they were like, I hated science? So, you know, like what's the feedback?
I think it depends. On middle school, they could be having a bad day because of something and they hate science, but I know that specifically speaking, if we're meeting with teams regularly and talking about student behaviors, some students who have a hard time attending or staying on topic don't have that problem in science class. And so that's something that we've discovered, that the strategies they use, the way the classroom runs, it lends itself to those students who need to be more hands-on and actively involved in the learning. Have you had any other input?
Yeah, on the constructive criticism side of things, those students that really do like to know the answers and they might be, faster learners, they might have the experience where they almost know where it's going to go. They know where the storyline's leading. So they can kind of get disengaged at times. But we did not survey the students, so I do think that's an important element to weave in as we go through the implementation to understand exactly where they're at and get that student perspective. The teachers, they're in that management phase of using the innovation being Open SciEd. So, they've had their struggles just learning how to do it and understanding how to engage with the new pedagogy. But overall, mostly positive, I'd say. But I think that's an important question to ask and dive deeper into.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then just to circle back with the redistricting in space, I think this is also a great example of the different uses of space and how it's important that we can't just think of, okay, well, we've fit X amount of people in this space before, because if we tried that with the same number, I don't think this program would be as successful as it is. Is that a fair statement to say?
Yeah, I think the bigger the class sizes get, the more challenging it is to have that same level of high quality instruction, but it's, go ahead.
Well, and I think about just the assessment I showed you. Trying to imagine myself as a teacher going through and assessing that summative assessment. If I had, 20 students in my class versus 30, that is a huge additional time commitment that you have to have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I can't wait until the program is fully rolled out and it's full 3-year course, and just to see really what dividends we get.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just phenomenal. So it's a great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Excellent information. It was first and foremost great to see just how much you value the socio-emotional and mental health supports for both students and teachers, and providing these opportunities for feedback from both students and teachers to understand how the advisory can be improved going forward, as well as their educational experience can be going forward. And that was also excellent to hear you providing opportunities for teachers to get professional development for their specific classroom needs and challenges that they're experiencing with their professional development opportunities. Would you say there's been good feedback with that, or and good participation in terms of teachers reaching out and vocalizing to you where their specific needs are, and being able to have professional development opportunities to address those needs?
Yeah, and those conversations so far have happened in pockets, either reflecting after a professional development session or planning for one. So I think reaching out to the larger group and asking for, and we've done this in the past in the district with the Voice and Choice PD or workshop models, is just there are experts and people who are willing to lead different sessions, but also tapping into the outside resources so that all teachers can continue to walk away with whatever they were looking for to enhance their teaching practices.
Thank you. It's very encouraging to hear that you are like tapping into those resources, as you're saying, and going to those experts to provide teachers with the additional professional development that they think that they need. And I'll also echo what my colleagues have said about Open SciEd. It sounds like really innovative way to teaching science, not just rote learning of concepts, as was mentioned, but also really diving deep into the critical thinking and analytical portions that also transfer into other parts of learning and life after school. So thank you very much.
Hi. Hi. We've got a bunch of Sullivan parents up here.
I do.
It's funny, like, take off the hat, put on the hat, take off that hat, put on that hat. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I think you like were able to squeeze a lot in there, and it really fell into the two buckets of like two of those two strategic objectives as far as the SEL and the rigorous curriculum. And I really appreciate the detail that went into both those things. And I think the use of time was efficient. I think it was good. Sometimes we get a little bit of feedback of like making sure the school highlights are short, but I think that this was a good use of time.
We may have a timer on.
Don't time me.
No, just for our own.
Okay. For your own feedback. No, because I think it was nice because you didn't try and gloss over everything, because that's hard to do, like everything's shallow. So you went into like two things really deeply, and I appreciate it. And I actually forgot about the PD part, because that was like near the beginning more, but that was, I think that teacher voice piece is really important, especially as far as PD goes, because if you're providing professional development opportunities and people are forced to go there, they're probably less engaged, just like with middle schoolers, So if they have choice and sort of that self-awareness and can self-assess their areas of need or their areas of interest or what's feeling urgent for them, and if they're able to learn about what they need to learn about, it feels like a good use of time for them. So thanks for reminding me of that, Dave. I guess the one question I have about Open SciEd, you said 2 lessons now, then 4 lessons next year, and then the full rollout, but like how many lessons is that, just like for me to put it in context?
So it's units, and then each unit has a different amount of lessons. So I was looking at.
So you're doing 2 units now?
Yes.
Okay, because I was like 2 lessons doesn't sound like a lot, but okay, 2
Right.
units. I
Yeah.
see.
So like for example, I got the light unit right now, and it comes with a whole unit storyline, very detailed. That's 8 lessons, and they break it down by the amount of days, 18 days total. But
Gotcha.
earlier I was looking at an 8th grade chemistry unit, and I think that was close to double the amount of days. So it just varies by the unit.
Gotcha. Okay, so full implementation, it's different by grade, like the number of units?
No, each grade's gonna, by that 3rd year, have the full implementation of everything that they're teaching is gonna be Open SciEd.
So all year?
It'll cover the whole
All
I see,
units,
I see.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. So is 4 units like half a year? I guess I'm just trying to understand like how many science units are done.
It's hard to compare.
Okay.
Like the amount of units the way Open SciEd packages curriculum versus the way that teachers might have packaged their own curriculum that they developed in a homegrown manner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really couldn't compare that. But I'd say 4 units next year could take teachers all year. And we're being very flexible
Gotcha.
with their use of it. Again, the focus is more on everyone teaching in a similar way, honoring that Open SciEd pedagogy, as opposed to putting a lot of pressure on them to be like, you need to get through and cover everything. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So it's more focused on like the experience of it than like meeting a timeline. Like you need to be here by Wednesday. You need to be there by next Friday.
Yep.
I see. And that's sort of like you talked about the student-led piece. So some classes might be a little faster than others based on where the students are at in that moment.
At the same time, though, I'd highlight the fact that we will have more consistency across the district than we ever had in the past, because all teachers will be using the same units provided by Open SciEd. We've never really had a curriculum that everyone's following. The curriculum prior was STEM scopes, and that was more something where teachers were picking out what they liked and utilizing it, as opposed to this consistent approach, and this is how we teach science.
Yeah, that's a big shift, and I bet in a couple of years the high school science teachers will be very grateful for that, because they'll be receiving students that have a consistent experience. Anyways, thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated.
Megan?
Yeah, it's great that you're making science really engaging. Science was one of my favorite subjects when I was a kid. So thanks for the presentation.
Welcome.
You're welcome to come observe if you want to play alongside the kids.
Be there tomorrow. Thank you both very much for coming. This was great. Thank you. No. Sorry. All right, thank you guys very much.
You can send us an email. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Shakir?
Okay, so moving on in the agenda, the superintendent presentation of evaluation evidence. So I shared a document with you. It's a report on the evaluation. You may recall the goal setting that we did back in November. I also have a printed copy for you.
Oh, thank you.
To hit on some of the evaluation pieces, I know Ms. Stokes, you are the chair of the evaluation subcommittee, and I thought I would kick it to you to maybe tee up kind of an overview. We talk about zooming in, zooming out, if that would be.
Sure, let's zoom out.
All right.
So as you remember, in September and October, we approved the district improvement plan with our strategic initiatives. And in November, we approved the superintendent's goals. All along this winter and spring, we've been hearing updates from central office on the district improvement plan progress. And so now tonight we are going to hear the superintendent presenting his evidence towards his goals. And then we will continue along with our process as far as submitting our individual evaluations. So we're gonna take it up a notch this year based on a recommendation from Dave Callahan last year. We used to do hard paper copies of our own individual evaluations in the past, and it is now a Google form. So it's very fancy and hopefully doesn't have any bugs in it, but we'll work through those if there are any. And so Dee Miller now is the owner of that document and has taken all subcommittee members off of it, so everything will be anonymous as we each submit our 7 different independent perspectives, ratings on each of the goal areas. And I think on the superintendent evaluation information matters, I'll update us on next steps so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. So we are here tonight to listen to the superintendent's evidence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for providing the overview. Just to highlight a few things, so as Ms. Stokes said, my evaluation, just like every other educator, is based on goals that were set and also standards and indicators. And the superintendent and central office, certain administrative roles are on a rubric that's similar as far as standards go, but when you get into the indicators, they're a little different based on your job description. Support personnel, guidance counselors, educators, we each have our own rubric that's unique. As I present tonight some of this, I just wanted to say that the work that I'm showing is ultimately, as a superintendent, it's a little bit different than when I submitted as a teacher, an assistant principal. The work involved in the goal areas is really something that's shared amongst the district. It's not something that I would take complete credit for. What I did try to do was I tried to call attention to pieces of evidence that I had a direct hand in as they related to a goal. And I thought that I was trying to strike a balance between not just doing another district improvement presentation, but try to stick to some of the work that's happening throughout the year, drawing attention to it to use it as evidence, and I'm happy to walk you through that tonight. If you look at the table of contents, it basically outlines the areas. I set 4 goals for myself that were approved, and we'll go through each of those. And then ultimately the standards, as I mentioned, it's not expected through the evaluation tool that a superintendent or an educator would report on all 33 indicators, but the subcommittee for the superintendent evaluation, we work together to identify a few key indicator areas. So if you look at the screen, you'll see standards, and you'll notice it goes 2A to 2D. You may be wondering, what's that about? That's because we decided that these were the specific ones that would be part of the focus for tonight. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the zoom out. As we zoom in, the first goal was successful completion of the new superintendent induction program. For each of these, I did the self-assessment for the goal areas. I did not self-assess standards, but it was an expectation for goals. In this particular one, I said that I felt like I met that goal. I attended the new superintendent induction program. Part of the goal of the program was to create an entry plan to work through some of those steps. As someone coming internally and transitioning, there were definitely goals and momentum moving forward for the district that I kind of ran with and continued, as opposed to if I was new to the district. So we carried forth some of the work. You'll notice through and I'm not going to click into the documents right now, just for the sake of zooming in and out. You've seen, the other thing you'll notice with evidence, some of these you've already put eyes on in some capacity, like a redistricting report or whatnot. But ultimately, I attended the meetings. I found them very effective. It's a 3-year program, so all superintendents in their first 3 years attend. This is year 1. The coach that I had was phenomenal. He came to one of the meetings, you may recall, to meet with me monthly. A lot of the work focused on entering in the fall, looking at your plans, strategic plans and goals, and what you're setting as a district for the district, and also really trying to focus on trying to build collaborative relationships among the district with various stakeholders. And Mr. Callahan, you're probably saying, what does he mean by stakeholders? Different groups. I think one thing I would mention is my relationships with our union, our FEA leadership, who's behind me to my right. Also working within the capacity of a superintendent with other department heads in town that run other areas, our community, our families, and ultimately our administration and our school committee to try to develop those relationships in your first year. Moving forward, it's certainly an area of trying to continue to build a strategy that's based off of what I've learned throughout the year. And I will continue on to Goal 2. Goal 2 was multi-year systems, a multi-year system of support. I self-assess myself as significant progress. I feel like there's a lot of work to be done in this area, but it's not something that's done overnight or done in a year. So you'll notice on the left-hand side in some of those key actions, you heard about advisory and trying to implement an advisory program at the secondary level through middle and high school that complements our elementary advisory work that happens for SEL in each of our elementary schools. But ultimately, I included some artifacts from our admin retreat, our summer work that we did to try to build out some of these systems. Panorama, for example, the goal this year was to establish it, build the platform and the database, get our administrators trained, and that you may recall at one of our district improvement plan presentations, that's as far as we took that particular goal. So significant progress felt like the most I would want to rate, because meeting that would mean we've rolled out the full plan. As I reflect on my goals this year, and I've said this a couple of meetings ago, just trying to be realistic with our bandwidth and what we can accomplish with the tools and resources and personnel that we have to do the work. And I want to be really, really clear about that so that we're putting out goals that are attainable, that meet the needs of our students and factor in our educators and our leadership to develop and strategize what are our next steps within that process. You'll notice the district improvement plan and the school improvement plans are also included. They were done as the schools at the elementary level were all level-based school improvement plans, and the middle school did one together as well. I think as we build off of that model, I think there's opportunity for each school to keep their own unique characteristics, but also look for some shared experiences that, as I've said since I interviewed for this position, I see value in having a consistent thread for what kids learn as they move from level to level without losing the complete character or autonomy of a particular building. I did include progress, and I provided a narrative that speaks to the approach and what we need to do moving forward. I think collecting feedback on our advisory model, our approach to systems, building out systems that support students, whether it's through our students support teams, looking at our implementation of a K-5 consistent SEL assessment. You heard about Panorama tonight and the student surveys at the middle level. I think there's a way for us to kind of build and codify that pre-K through 12, if I think about pre-K with DECA for SEL assessments. And just, hold on. And yes, I talked about the administrative pre-treat and retreat in there. Effective entry in goal setting, I put significant progress. I wanted to call attention to a few things. This talked about the entry plan, developing district and school-wide goals, helping our principals to create goals. And I think in that particular area, setting the stage right from the first day of school and kind of hitting on some of the areas in which we would move to create a multi-tiered systems of support and start to build that out. I will say the report of entry findings is one area that I felt like I didn't meet this particular goal. I do add a little bit here that by the end of May, I was going to deliver the report of entry findings. That's going to be a June project. I put the reasoning in there was around the impact of our financial forecasting, our redistricting initiatives, and a shift towards the budget development process through the winter and the spring that certainly consumed a tremendous amount of our times. And it's actually influenced my entry. As I learned through the year, I think having gone through the complete budget process has allowed me to learn even more about our system and our needs and our resources and what we have and what we don't have. And I certainly would just call that I did actively engage with, in a series of 26 meetings, between faculty meetings, meeting with our nurses, our administrators. If you think of each school, 10 schools across the board, the meetings added up. So I need to continue to analyze that feedback. I have a draft ready that will provide some findings and recommendations. But I will say the budget development process has been certainly something that's an area that I continue to grow in. I'm thankful for Mrs. Goodman for her support and help through that process, but I would point to that as well. The fourth goal was the redistricting analysis process. In here, you'll notice the goal was to conduct an analysis process that was comprehensive, that had multiple stages to it, that incorporated feedback, and ultimately provided you as a school committee with the information you needed to make a decision based on the information we gathered through a variety of groups. So we had a working group that met pretty regularly throughout the process. The Space Needs Subcommittee, which was a subcommittee of the school committee, to work as a guide, basically a steering committee. And ultimately, we had a redistricting advisory committee comprised of about 50 folks, stakeholders, Mr. Callahan, from a variety of different areas and representative of each school. And we tried to develop a variety of scenarios that ultimately led to meeting with faculty. We met with our faculty and staff, and we created multiple opportunities for the community to engage, including a survey. And between all that information and those public sessions to engage, along with the survey data, we were able to compile a report that had recommendations. And ultimately, I marked myself as conducting the analysis itself, having met that as in my self-assessment. I'm going to move to standards and indicators in this particular area. You heard, like I said, there's no one thing that I would say I do alone, but there's work that I support and have a hand in helping. So you'll notice I included the district improvement reports and the strategic objectives for numbers 1 and 2, and 3 was when we had our math curriculum folks come in and talk through the multi-tiered systems support, how they're assessing students, categorizing them, and really identifying what types of supports they need. And then we talked a little bit about the intervention model at the elementary level based on using the interventionists. You also heard from Dr. Frazier on behalf of the Teaching and Learning Office about the literacy implementation and the pilot and the adoption progress, the adoption process, where we landed with that. That included a group of educators as part of that committee to investigate and arrive at that. There are areas in there that I think, as we continue to goal set, it'll be important to gather feedback from our educators. It'll be important to gather feedback from our leadership and look at what makes the most sense as we move forward to strategically plan and create realistic goals that might take multiple years, that might take time, that need to be done in phases. But ultimately, you'll see some notes on some of the progress that we made. For management and operations, it talked about environment, and in here, I added a few pieces of evidence and resources. One was around just safety. School safety has been an area, a passion of mine for a long time in this particular role, and trying to make sure that we're creating a schedule and a drill schedule that helps us to prepare our students and staff. I think there's an area there when I do a self-assessment in the future, self-reflection, is how do we continue to grow in that area? And I think there's a want and a need for us to continue to develop. I think pre-COVID, we were on a pretty good trajectory with that work as a district, and I think as we've come back into post-COVID pandemic, we need to continue to train, because we think about staff turnover since we've done like a large district training and some of those other pieces, and we need to continue to look for opportunities. But this year, I feel like we've done good work to create those safe environments. And I would add in there, the reason the retreat agenda was in there and some of those pieces is because one focus was on creating some tiered behavioral expectations for students that we've tried to put into place that actually look at behavior and the response to behavior to try to show our students, our staff, and our families kind of what type of behavior ends up becoming a level 1 or a level 2 violation, and kind of try to lay that out for folks, whether you're the aggressor or the victim, and try to plan out for our folks and create responses to behavior that are clear and help educate students along the way, beyond just punitive, but trying to balance that. Laws and ethics, we successfully negotiated 4 collective bargaining contracts with our negotiation teams. And when I say we, I mean the entire team of people and educators and leaders that were in those meetings to negotiate those. That was a process that took many meetings and many hours depending on the group that we met with, and that was something that happened that was not part of any goal that I listed, but certainly was something that I dedicated time to engage in. And the ARC-Ed was the first year we've rolled out the mandated training and added ARC-Ed. We need to continue to develop that, but ultimately we shifted from providing a Google Doc or a Google Classroom where teachers go in, but try to incorporate more of a video type process where people could click in and see and learn from a Massachusetts-based company about Massachusetts policies. It does include Franklin ones as well that are not video-based, just for full disclosure, but ultimately we try to have a dashboard where you could track your progress and go through it and help with onboarding. There's areas in there that I think we can continue to grow that program. I've called attention to, as it relates to policies, we facilitated 11 school policy subcommittee meetings. It's interesting, I thought it was more. And I might be wrong, but I have 11 in my calendar when I searched.
This Dave wouldn't
We're
stop
just
talking.
having so much fun.
You wouldn't stop talking.
I don't know why it did, but we did revise or adopt over 21 policies, which is a pretty good, that was pretty progressive. So I felt like a lot of work went, and we did pretty well there. Fiscal systems. You've heard about the budget development process. I provided a link to the website, but ultimately I wanted to provide specific artifacts that I had a hand in developing with Mrs. Goodman and our team around our reports, the presentations that have gone out. Mrs. Goodman and I presented to FinCom in December, on December 7th. We also did a joint budget subcommittee. We had another FinCom meeting where we presented, and tomorrow we will also be attending. So I provided some evidence in those areas. Also, some artifacts that included the letter for the 14% hike in tuition. Mrs. Morano and I co-authored a letter that went to our state reps and the state regarding that. At the time we received it, just as in reaction to what was happening back in November. And I just put that in that particular area. That's an area that I continue to grow in, and I'm interested to grow in and learn, and continue to try to be a strong advocate for our schools, a responsible fiscal steward. That's a little bit of a cheesy line, but ultimately that's what we hope to try to do, but ultimately we're working within the resources that are allocated to us, and I think that's a real challenge. Family and community engagement. Once again, there are so many things that happen throughout the district that I cannot take credit for. I tried to point to a few one-way communications, and I would say that as a district, we have multiple two-way communications, which we're involved engaging the community that I'll speak to. But I provided a back-to-school letter and then a checklist that went out. The checklist, for some reason, I was at a soccer field 2 weeks ago. I had someone say, I appreciated the checklist, and I'm like, that seems like 16 years ago at this point, but yeah, thank you. Funny, so just trying to create opportunities to communicate with families. There's other pieces of evidence in there that speak to not back to school and those areas, but fanned expectations and reminders to families, and just trying to be as upfront as possible about what our needs are and what we're attempting to do. The other thing I put at the bottom was redistricting. There was a lot of communication that was put out around that, and opportunities to engage the community in a variety of ways. Once again, I thought I could list a variety of things that we do as a district, but I tried to provide examples that I was directly involved with. Finally, for professional culture, cultural proficiency continues to be an area that we grow. You may recall on October 25th, I sat at this table with our DEI director and our student services and our teaching and learning assistant superintendents to go through the presentation from the equity audit, the DEI work. If you attended that Saturday morning in November, I co-facilitated the deep dive with our DEI director at the Franklin Public Library. There's also a spring DEI episode. It'll be pre-recorded and edited as a way to get that out virtually to folks, but continuing to try to build off of that work, which takes time. And I think that's an area where I wanted to communicate out about cultural proficiency. Once again, communication. I added in here the superintendent's report. It's 46 pages, but it's every report that I've read or written that we typically post like one-offs for every meeting, but I keep them all in I just have a running list that I keep, and I try to keep it very organized as a way that every 2 weeks I do write a report with updates to the community that I read out loud here, but also get posted to the website with our agendas that I feel like is an important part of the role to put those together. Once again, continuous learning, trying to model that. I tried to kick the year off directly right when I was appointed, and it was the day after school. We talked a little bit about the admin pre-treat and trying to come together and model for the leadership team, just reflecting on what's worked, what hasn't, what direction we need to go. I tried to also just engage our staff on opening day in a way that was authentic and told a little bit about me, but then also talked about some of the things that were on the horizon for us as a district, and would say that I felt like that time, I think it was time well spent on the first day to kind of have the first opportunity as a superintendent in a system that I've spent multiple years in many different roles. It was certainly something that I will not forget, and I appreciate to this day. May 15th, you'll notice in here an A-team meeting. We've already begun to start with our admin to reflect on this year and what worked and what didn't, and what direction do we need to move. The next step is to continue to engage our admin team and ultimately engage our educators. One thing I wanted to call attention to through this, and I will probably say this tomorrow too, the amount of time we've had to spend reconciling a budget and the amount of time. It struck me when we held the school business administrator interim interviews that the school business administrators said that they were done with their budgets in April, and they're planning for next year. And I feel like in Franklin, we're still trying to field the team and figure out what team we're going to put forth. So I think we lose time, and I think symptomatic of that is the feedback cycle, because you end up concluding a year in June where you vote on a budget, you field a team, and I feel like the timing, regardless of the numbers, just the sheer timing of what we are asked to do in this particular context, I think disadvantages us, and that would be a finding that I'll have in my report, just around the budget development process and trying to kind of think about that. Because as I started to really do this, and I put a lot of time into reflecting, I have a lot of written reports happening at once, but this is one that I just would call attention to as we do this, and then thinking about bandwidth for our collective system, the people behind me, the people to my right, and how much we hope to achieve with the resources we have, is something that I just would call attention to, and it felt like this was the right spot to talk about that, because there's a lot of work that happens to land a budget. But the time that we are spending doing that at this stage certainly disadvantages us as we move forward. So I would just call attention to that, not to be a downer. But the final thing I just included at the bottom was just the rubric itself and many of the pieces of the report that go with it. And at this point, I'll open it up to any questions or feedback or comments.
Camille?
Not at this moment, I'm still digesting, but thanks. Dave?
Things. One, appreciate all the attachments to really kind of drill down. Just, I'm not sure if, I think maybe you mentioned this, we'll discuss it later, but just in terms of timelines, about will we discuss that afterwards?
Yeah, or we can discuss it now.
Chat it, okay.
Yeah, is that okay? So I think, so we just got this, and there's a lot of information here. So I think, you know, we all, as you just said, Camille, you're digesting this, and so, like, really, we need to have time to click on every link, and I'm sure questions will come up, and we can just email Lucas if we have a certain question about, you know, details within this. But we have, our job over the next few days is to reflect on all this evidence and sort of dig into it, compile questions, commendations, recommendations, and then complete our individual ratings. So we have, for each goal and indicator, we have a rating scale, and like it's all, you know, the rubrics are all there, it's all right there, everything we need to make our determination individually. So our deadline for that is Tuesday, May 30th at noon. So D. Miller's going to send it out to us tomorrow morning, and then it's Tuesday, May 30th at noon. And I'll remind you. So then that information will be kept secure with D and confidential, and then shared with the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee at our June 1st meeting, where we'll review the information contained in each of the 7 individual feedback forms and get some consensus for each area and record the narrative feedback. So the ratings are required, and then the narrative is optional. So if you have a lot to say on something, you can write that in there. If you just want to rate something and don't have extra comments to say on that, that's fine. That's optional. So when we've gathered all the information together, the subcommittee will compile the quantitative and qualitative information into a summative report, and then present that report to the full school committee at our next meeting on June 13th, where we'll vote to approve the report as the official evaluation of the superintendent. So that's sort of like how it works. So tomorrow morning, so we can dig through this on our own, do our Google form on our own, and then the superintendent evaluation subcommittee will pull it all together and make it pretty, and then bring it back to the group. Does that help? Does that explain?
It does,
Okay.
yeah, just to be able to kind of get the next step. I already got on my phone to really kind of have it completed by Friday.
Perfect. That was good before the weekend. Yeah.
But and so Lucas, and then just if any kind of questions arise,
Yes,
you
please.
know, today or tomorrow, I'll shoot you an email just so that way too you're not having to respond back to me while you're barbecuing. But I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Jagir. This has been very informative. Thank you for the summary, just to kind of give us a preface of what's going on. I look forward to reading this, just knowing that it's been your first year. I've personally seen a lot of just growth and just a lot of benefits to the district. So I'm excited to see what you've thought of yourself and how you've done and how you've attained these goals and really where you felt. I was going to say, the time frame though, so the 30th at noon, will you have enough time as a committee to do what you need to do? It seems like very like compressed.
No, it's tight. So we meet June 1st. So like Dee doesn't have to do anything besides make sure that your names aren't on it when she gives us the information. So then we meet June 1st, and at our meeting we'll compile everything, which is going to be easier because it's in a Google form, so we don't have to be doing like scratching out math on a paper. And then, right, well, I don't know. I work well under a deadline, and I guess my subcommittee members will.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work. We'll make it
all right,
work.
cool.
Yeah,
Just-
it's June. There's a lot happening.
We didn't have
One more thing.
15 meetings like other meetings did.
Yeah. Okay.
True. This is where we make up for it.
I will bring snacks. Stop
Gotcha.
you.
But
So
no,
it will be done. It will have
Cool.
to be done.
cool. But otherwise, no, looking forward to reading this and yeah, looking for the output. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for putting all this together. Really appreciate the honesty and transparency, and look forward to doing a deeper dive into it, and we'll reach out with any questions. Thank you.
Yes, same. I think it's easier in a way to sit down with. We'll have the Google, or I'll have the Google form on one window, and I'll have this on the other, and sort of click in, click out, and send you whatever emails if there's clarification or anything. And I just really appreciate the organization of this. And to my colleagues here, I know the last evaluation we did together was for Sarah, as we knew that she was leaving the district, so it was sort of like a evaluation light. And so this is the real stuff right here. This is the meat of it. So it'll be a good one. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. Look forward to going through it.
Ditto.
Thank you. I'll take any questions you have, so you can send them to me. I'm happy to answer. And once again, I would just say I would model that I welcome feedback and recommendations. And, you know, I'm in this for the right reasons and I want to grow as an individual, but also I want our district to continue to grow and do the work that we all got into this for, which is to help kids. So thank you.
Can I ask a question? It's more a procedure question, but I wondered if, without breaking open meeting laws, we can coordinate our questions, because Lucas has 2 days of budget presentations coming up, and I just don't want him to have to field 7 different people's emails. And if we could, I don't know how we're allowed to do that, but if we could think about how we could collate questions so that if we have them, he could address them efficiently and not just have his phone on constant.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
You could email me and blind copy so that you don't get a reply from your colleagues or something. I would wonder about a way to not engage.
Because we can read it, we
Yep.
just can't
Right.
deliberate.
Wouldn't be able to deliberate. Just a thought. But you.
Wait, we could read the question, but if he replied back, it wouldn't go to
I'm
all of us.
also fine with fielding, if 7 people ask the same question, it's 7 people in the context of questions would come between now and Tuesday.
Yep.
I wouldn't.
Well, it needs to be done Tuesday at noon. So I would say if you need to email,
Email me,
Lucas,
sure.
email him by Friday at 1 o'clock? Friday at 1
Is
o'clock.
it is it deliberation if we dump our questions in the same Google Doc and share it with him, so that we can see? Like, I don't need to answer that again, and then he can answer those questions for us. Is that
So yeah,
fair?
we could have a Google Doc with each, I know, we could have a Google Doc with every goal, and then if you have a question about goal 1, you just write your question. And
Yeah.
then if you have a question about goal 3, you write your question. And
Because it's
then
not deliberation.
just answers
Yeah.
them, and we don't say like, Al, I have a follow-up question, like, we don't
Yeah.
go back and forth between
Right.
each other about what we say.
Right, but if you see that Al posted a question that you were going to ask, you don't have
I
to
just-
post it.
Right, because Lucas would just answer within the doc.
Yes.
And we would all see it, no.
You're saying no?
I just think optically it might not be the right move. I trust that everyone would do what you're saying, but it wouldn't be worth it to me for you to
Okay.
have to do that. I
Right.
just assume, I appreciate you trying to come up with ways, but it's okay.
I would
Yeah.
my own 2 cents, feel free, I don't need a personalized response. If you just kind of copy and paste whatever you said to Camille and kick it over to me,
Fair enough.
that's fine.
So questions by Friday at
End of work day.
1? Well, let's say 1, because you have to answer them, which is,
And the end of your workday is a little fluid.
Are you okay, Camille?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, no, I just didn't want to send him away if you weren't okay.
No, I'm okay.
Thank you, Lucas. Give you a second, and then you can tee this up.
Sure. And
Listen, I'm gonna fall asleep if you do that.
And the ones to the right.
And the ones there,
The
right
ones
at
to
the
the
door
right.
too, right at the door. Thank you.
he was just trying to be nice.
I know, we help.
Steve Sherlock makes that look so easy.
Right? I think it was perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Okay. That's okay. All right, so moving on to discussion action. And we have an action item. We earlier went into executive session to discuss the position of the interim business administrator. Per the process and regulations, an open public meeting had to take place, a public interview, which took place on May 16th. And you met today to discuss in executive session. And ultimately, I'm passing it on to you, Ms. Spencer, as chair to continue regarding the recommendation of approval.
So I recommend approval of a one-year contract with Dr. Robert Dutch as interim school business administrator as discussed. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, questions? Okay, roll call vote. Camille?
Yes.
Dave Callahan?
Yes.
Alex Charles?
Yes.
David McNeil?
Yes.
Elise Stokes?
Yes.
Megan Whitmore?
Yes.
Denise Spencer, yes. All right, motion carries. Mr. Jagir?
Okay, next up is the redistricting analysis advisory committee that was established in the fall, early on in the school year, to help support the redistricting analysis that took place. At this point, that task and that initiative is completed, so I'm recommending to dissolve the redistricting analysis committee as discussed.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, questions? All right. Vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Discussion only items, none. Information matters, superintendent evaluation, Elise?
So I had written up the process in an email, and I can resend that if anybody else has questions as they're going through this and wants to reference that.
Cool.
Any other follow-up? No.
All right. Budget?
Yes, budget has not met since our last school committee meeting. However, on May 10th, we gave a presentation on the FY24 budget before the Town Finance Committee. Tomorrow night, we will be presenting along with other town departments before the Town Council during their budget hearings. Our next budget subcommittee meeting is scheduled for June 5th.
Okay. Policy?
Let's see, yeah, we haven't met since our last meeting, but we got next one coming up on June 21st.
Okay. Space needs?
We have not met since the redistricting meeting. I'm assuming we'll probably touch base to talk through master facilities planning in partnership with the town.
Joint PCC?
Yep. So we had our last meeting of the year last week. We talked through an update on the redistricting analysis, current state of the budget at the time, and then discussed the final end of the year items that are happening. So fundraisers, enrichment programs that are being supported, dining out events, and then also any updates to the PCC structures where they may have any openings for the upcoming years. So we'll reconvene sometime in the new year with the new group.
Okay, perfect, thank you. School Wellness Advisory.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, June 6th.
Okay, CPAC.
CPAC has their next board meeting June 7th, and CPAC reps have their last meeting of the year with district leadership on June 14th.
Okay. Mental Health and Wellbeing.
Our last meeting was a few weeks ago. But I will, myself and 3 other task force members will be at the town health fair tomorrow with a table handing out handouts and different coping strategies and stress balls and whatnot. So,
thank you. DEI Committee.
DEI committee has a meeting tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. All right, moving right along, consent agenda. Mr. Jagir, do you
Okay.
need a sip of water before you start?
I recommend approval of the minutes from your May 9th, 2023 school committee meeting as detailed. I recommend approval of the budget transfers as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $600 from the Keller PCC for field trips as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $8,900 from the Oak Street PCC for field trips as detailed. I recommend acceptance of 2 checks totaling $1,230 from the Parmenter PCC for field trips as detailed. I recommend acceptance of a check for $246.55 from the JFK PCC for supplemental supplies as detailed. I recommend acceptance of 3 checks totaling $1,170 for district-wide gifts as follows. Franklin Cultural Council, $170, supplemental curriculum materials, supplemental curriculum materials. Special Olympics, $500 in-house enrichment. Special Olympics, $500 for in-house enrichment for the RMS Unified Basketball. I recommend acceptance of 2 checks totaling $1,026.70 from Ohio Pile for $26.70 for supplemental supplies, and Peter Paglioni, $1,000 for the scholarship.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none, vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, moving along, citizens' comments.
Denise?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can we take a step back real quick? Do we have an update for the Community Relations Subcommittee?
There are none.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Citizens' comments. Are there any citizens in the audience, in person or online, who would like to make a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda and falls within the committee's purview? All right. Okay. Moving right along. New business, Mr. Jagir.
Okay, so we have our next meeting. We will be looking to continue to celebrate students as we near the end of the year. Some of the things are kind of rounding out and closing, whether it's through competition or whatnot. We'll keep with our pattern of kind of a high-level, state-level distinction to kids. I can't predict what those will be. I hope there's a lot on that agenda for that. We also will probably have our the superintendent evaluation, I believe, will be reported out at that particular meeting. And then we have a few other components in here that I'm looking at related to the Spain trip that I started to talk about a little bit. Just a recap on international trips. I know that Laura Keenan is a teacher, a Spanish teacher, who I wanted to provide an opportunity to share a little bit about that experience and work to just share and thank you for allowing those, to try to provide a follow-up to what happens when we approve those, what are those like. So, and civics projects I have on here. We will look to have the 8th graders share some of their civics projects information. And a revised budget. Probably should have said that first. Thank you. Yes.
All right. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Meeting is adjourned.